to the show and fall at your door. We got that info for you. Touchdown on that plane and buy anything. More than just a podcast for you.
Welcome to another edition of the 10-4 YouTube show. Starting off episode 4, we have a new contributor and panelist this week, Miss Angela Pride, owner of Coach with Pride. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Greetings, everyone. I am super excited to be here. Thank you guys for inviting me on. I've been watching the show, and I have a lot I feel like to add. But I am currently with my husband doing some sports consulting. We are trying to help high school athletes, get ready for that recruitment process. And so we do a lot of different things with sports. My husband is a high school coach, and I focus on the academics, and we just love sports. So glad to be here today.
Yeah, welcome. And today we have our old faithfuls, Kevin Tolliver and Terrence Parson as well. So we're going to jump right in. This week, as a matter of fact, on Friday, 10-4's own Randy Wade led a brigade of Big Ten parents to the steps of the Big Ten front office in Chicago. Do you think the steps that they took on this week will make a change?
Me personally, I'm going to start off. I definitely think, I am excited about what's going on in the college world. Everybody's complaining about this whole COVID-19 thing, but I feel like that it is giving athletes the voice that they've so needed, especially amateur athletes. We got to look at the NCAA basically controls everything that they want to control, and then when they don't want to control things, they say nothing. So I think that it's a positive step in the right direction for the Big Ten parents to be speaking out, and any other parents, as well as athletes. So I'm excited about it. I think it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Okay.
I'm going to piggyback off Ms. Pride. It's definitely a step in the right direction. The parents have a lot involved here, and so do their sons and daughters. So them speaking up and letting them know they're not going to go for not being told what's going on. Like, you're going to make a decision, it should be a group decision. And then with, the chancellors and presidents, they don't know if they voted or not. It's real messy. And, I'm starting to follow along. So them stepping out right now is probably opening the Big Ten eyes, and there's going to be some changes going toward the future, I believe.
Mr. Tolliver?
Yeah. All of this with the college conferences and the COVID-19 has definitely been a challenge. And everybody's always talked about, you got to say something. And, now is a good time for us to really say a whole lot and to control a whole lot and get the NCAA and the conferences to really pay attention and what's really important at this time. So, we've all said pretty much the same thing, but it's definitely a good, huge step in the right direction. And I think we got to keep it going, and keep talking about it and keep putting it out there and doing all that we can and get everyone involved, for the best interest of these college players. Because, there's no football without those guys. Period. It's not going to happen. So I agree with everyone on this topic, moving in the right direction.
So I'm going to be alone on my island, and I'm going to say this will not make a change unless 3 things are corrected. 1, this group of parents needs to be clear on what they want. There are conflicting documents out in the social space and that have been submitted and even articulated. So 1, it's great. We all say it, a house divided can't stand. You do need to be clear on what you want. 2, they have to control their narrative. I have read and heard and watched very, very conflicting information about the group, and having known somebody, I know Randy, so I know his intention, but what his intentions are and how they're being put forth in various outlets of the media don't necessarily align with who I know him to be. And 3, they need to build a coalition. A lot of people are saying you've made this about football, but you weren't this passionate in the spring when basketball was getting cut, when baseball was getting cut, and you didn't have a coalition of parents from multiple fall sports. So I think that if there are some changes and some pivoting, it can actually make a change. But without changing and without pivoting, it's not going to change anything. Because let's just be honest, the Big Ten commissioner nor any university president has not in the past ever consulted parents on scheduling and team travel. So you have to be very, very clear on your process if that's something that you want to happen going forward. So,
well, Denzel, I agree with what you're saying. There definitely needs to be some consistency. However, I want to address what you said about people saying that no one was saying anything. So let's follow the money. Let's be honest. Let's be upfront. Football, whether you're talking about collegiate football, professional football, whatever, it is the one sport that you have everybody watching. White, black, whoever, right? So not really the same with basketball, not really the same with baseball, not really the same with soccer. And so when you come from that perspective, when you know that the NFL is one of the greediest leagues there is. They are all about that money. They're going to get those young men out there regardless at all costs. Same thing with collegiate football. It's just it's a different beast from my perspective. So it's not that those other sports aren't important, but I think that the voice, the fact that the football players are saying things like, we may not play. If we don't get what we want, we may not play. I think that has the possibility, the potential to have a huge impact. Huge. And yes, there needs to be consistency. There needs to be some come to Jesus meetings as far as, what everybody really is saying that they want. But I'm excited because I think the NCAA, they have already started responding. They're going to have to answer. They're going to have to give something. Now, it may just be a bone, but that's going to be up to, again, the coalition, the parents, who's vocal, what big athletes are saying, hey, it's a no-go if we don't get what we want. It's going to all be contingent upon that. So I said a lot, but
I think you're making my point, there was a coalition a coalition of athletes asking for some things prior to this. They're not present in this. And the athletes that are coming forward, they're just talking about playing. And so I totally agree with what you say. I'm not disputing that football is king, and even beyond football, cash is king. I totally agree with that. However, you're actually making my point. That coalition, that are we in alignment with the athletes who originally stepped forward and started carrying the narrative? Which athletes are we aligning with? That piece is missing. And so, again, very unique time, opportunity to make some change. Nothing this group has done has like we're talking about the Big Ten, but the NCAA has already said, hey, we're going to get extra eligibility. What the NCAA is doing, I think it's independent of this particular subset of parents. But that's just me. Again, you're totally right. Absolutely right in the dollars that are commanded by football. Absolutely right. We wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't so much money. Thoughts, questions? Okay, so
I also wanted to say real quick, I was talking to some parents and some athletes, and I didn't mention to you guys, I neglected to mention, I have an HBCU rising junior that plays football, and I have an NFL player that's currently in the league, his first year rookie. But I've been talking to some parents, and a lot of parents are saying, you guys talked about this a little bit last week about, how Trevor Lawrence is saying something, and now people are starting to listen. But the people that I'm talking to are like, Trevor Lawrence doesn't represent us. And so it like you said, it goes back to your point. We've got to get some unity. We've got to get a collective stand in order to get what we want, because you're absolutely right, and I agree with you. The we want to play people aren't the same people that were saying we need some consistent testing across the board. And Coach Tolliver made the point last week that was, my son, when the MEAC canceled their season, I was super excited because I knew they weren't going to test those boys, and I knew they weren't going to get the same treatment that a Notre Dame gets, which is where my son, who's in the league now, that's where he went. So, it needs to be consistent, but my point is the NCAA isn't consistent. The NCAA regulates what they want to regulate. So if it was consistent, the HBCUs would be getting the same treatment that the Power 5 schools get, and they don't. And so that's why I was totally okay. I told my son, focus on your studies, do what you need to do. We need to get that degree, even if we transfer or whatever, because they're paying for it. So that's my take.
So moving right along to question 2. This question is really interesting. It's, what should a person's why be when it comes to coaching? Why should coaches actually coach?
That's a big question. I'm going to tell you, it's really loaded, just from all of our experience and all of our travels. But I'm going to go back, and I said it last week. The most important thing that I've always driven over here in this Tolliver segment was life in itself, because without life, none of this stuff happens. So if they don't care about life, period, then why are you coaching? Because that's what it all entails of. A bunch of athletes which have life in itself that are trying to make a career for themselves and trying to move forward and do some of the things in life that they really want to do and that they're capable of doing. That's my biggest answer to that. All the rest of it is just kind of like just been the norm. It just falls in place. It's been a lot of facts. It's just been a lot of travel in it. It's just been a ton of stuff. But for me, if you don't care about lives, period, then I don't understand why you coaching.
I totally agree with you, Coach Tolliver. This one is really near and dear to my heart, though, because the reason I'm so involved is because we've seen so many bad examples of coaches. And so I feel like your why to coaching, is just like Coach Tolliver said, it goes back to the kids. And I would say to give an answer to it, if you're not there to move that young girl or that young man forward, why are you there? But I do know that the answer to that question is a lot of coaches are there for that bonus check. A lot of coaches are there for the daddy ball. A lot of coaches are there for selfish reasons, and those are the coaches that, again, you can see them from a mile away, but for some reason, just like in the league now, come on, let's just be honest, it goes all the way from rec league on up to professional. Some coaches shouldn't even be in the position that they're in. Look at the head coaches in the NFL. And again, I don't mean to disrespect anybody, but the truth is the truth. You can see that and just because you play the sport doesn't mean you can coach it. So let's go back to that. But like I said, I think the why has to be moving these young men and these young women forward. That definitely needs to be the why. If that's not your why, then you got some conflicts of interest, and that's when you start seeing people that are in it for the wrong reasons, and that's when you start seeing kids not really getting what they need. I've watched kids through football in particularly run up and down the field, do everything, be a workhorse, and they ain't got grades. If you're a coach, how you even playing them on Friday nights if they ain't got the grades? How, and then you pretend you don't know? Absolutely not. So that's where, that's where I come in. I'm very vocal about that. I'll tell a coach to their face, I don't care. It is some of the parents' responsibility, but when you are a coach that's there for that kid, you almost adopt that kid, period.
That's true.
Yeah, I agree. Like, coaching for me is definitely about the kids. It's definitely not about the money. Like I said last week, that little stipend I get with girls volleyball, I do a year round. I live out in the suburbs. I come into the city, pick the kids up, take them to the games. I've had parents tell me, if you want them to be there, you'll take them. So a lot of parents don't even want to be involved. So when you're a coach, it comes down to more than just wins and losses, And like I said last week, it's okay if you're getting kids into school or you following through to make sure they finish. Because anybody could coach and say they get kids in the school, but all these kids finishing. So for me, moving forward in life, like I always tell them, it gets greater later. You know, we may not win all the time, but we learning life lessons. And like I said, with my volleyball program, we don't win a lot, but that success rate when they go to college and finish is very high, and that's what I'm most proud of. So again, you're right. You got to be like a father figure to these kids.
It's interesting. I went out to, I'm a mom, so I coach, but differently. I coach life skills and stuff like that. But I was like, okay, let me go and look and see who are the coaches that I respect and why do they coach. So probably my favorite coach ever is Nick Saban. I think he's a perfect example of failing forward. But it's interesting. I was reading an article where he was interviewed this week. Well, not this week, but earlier this year. And he said that the reason that he sticks with college is because he can have the greatest impact on men when their age is 18 to 22. And that it is very important for him to be able to change the lives of men in that age range. And then another coach that I respect is Troy Calhoun. He's the head coach at Air Force where my son played. And he had the opportunity to coach in the league, and now he's at Air Force. One of the things that he talks about is, first, he's passionate about the Air Force itself. And the passion about the Air Force leads him to want to develop leaders at the academy. And so my favorite coaches actually do agree with all of you in that they're coaching because they're trying to change the lives of men. And I think that's why people should coach.